Is this a make or break year for Daryl Morey going into the 2025-26 season? Well, we're going to break it down and give our thoughts right here on Locked On 76ers.
You are Locked On 76ers, your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Now let's get into the episode. What's going on, everybody? Welcome into Locked On 76ers. We're your host, Keith Pompey, 76ers beat writer. I'm Kayla Santiago, sideline reporter for the Delaware Blue Coats, the NBA G League affiliate of the Philadelphia 76ers. If you're watching us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. In addition, check us out at our free daily newsletter on lockedondaily.com. So is this a make or break year for Daryl Morey? I say yes. Keith, your thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, when you look at it, it's a make or break year because when you look at the 76ers, right, by now they should be in a better situation. I mean, let's go back to years ago when they picked up Doc Rivers and Daryl Morey, right? Like both of these guys brought instant credibility to the franchise, and it hasn't translated into deeper postseason runs for a franchise accustomed to second round exits, right? So what happened? You get rid of Doc Rivers, right? But truth be told, the Sixers are in worse shape than when their Toronto Raptors eliminated them in the second round of the 2019 playoffs on Kawhi Leonard's 4-bounce buzzer beater, right? But you know, back then, the team had hope. The decision to let go Jimmy Butler and J.J. Redick, instead that they signed Al Horford that offseason, proved to be the roster's undoing. Well, what happened? You know, Daryl Morey came in. He came in and he got rid of Al Horford. He did whatever. But back then, we're talking about a team that was accustomed to second round exits, who didn't even make the playoffs this season, right? So, you know, Doc Rivers was the guy. They said he was the man. Daryl Morey is supposed to be the most renowned front office executive, or at least one of them in all the sports. And now we look at it and you say, this team is worse off than it was back during when they got rid of Jimmy Butler, and even during the start of the process. So yes, this is definitely a make or break year. And I think there's two things that factor in that you have to say. You know, in the podcast we had yesterday, we talked about health. So you have to give him a chance to see how healthy this team is. But if they don't get better, if they don't get healthier, right, you have to look at Daryl Morey and say, dude, you gave Joel Embiid that max extension. You gave Paul George that max contract. So it has to be a make or break year for you to do things, because you can't keep blaming other people. You can't say, okay, well, it was Doc Rivers' fault. We got a new coach. At the end of the day, everybody's going to say, dude, this was a team that was on the cusp of making the Eastern Conference Finals. And now you have a team that can't even make the playoffs, but is a team that's in cap hell. So that's going to be a problem for Daryl Morey. That's why it's a make or break season.
It really has been downhill when you put it that way for the Philadelphia 76ers, because there was a lot of hope surrounding this team, especially after going up against the Raptors, and people just seeing the team that they had that possibly could have gone to an NBA championship with the matchup with the Bucks. And then, of course, Golden State being a little bit injured from that year as well, Kevin Durant, and then, of course, Klay Thompson getting injured at the end there. But the thing about Daryl Morey that really is interesting to me is that no matter what happens with the Philadelphia 76ers, he is going to look bad if it goes down bad. And what I mean by that is if the 76ers are healthy and they go to the playoffs again and they lose in the second round, you're still saying, okay, did he do enough in the offseason? Did he make that right draft pick? Did this all work out? Should he have gotten other guys or kept other guys? And that is still to be determined on who he keeps. In addition to that, if they're not healthy and they go down this road again of what we just saw this past season, you can't play the blame game anymore of, well, it's Joel and Paul George's fault, which I'm not saying they're a side to blame. I'm not saying that they're not to blame, because definitely you look at Joel Embiid's history and you say, okay, injury prone, this, that, and the other. But then you look at Daryl Morey and say, well, what do you think was going to happen? You sign this guy to an extension who has been injured. He gets injured again. And then you bring in Paul George, who's older in his career, has had some injuries as well. So no matter what happens with this Philadelphia 76ers team, Daryl Morey could be on the hot seat if it goes either way. To me, Keith, this year for Daryl is make or break, in the sense they have to get to the Eastern Conference Finals or he's out of a job.
Yeah, and it could be even worse than that. Like, I think that's just the minimum, because when you look at it and you say all these guys that they have, they should have been doing that a while ago. Let's face it. Heck, we look at, you say Brett Brown was the tanking coach, right? Brett Brown was an executive at one summer, and what happened? They lost in the second round. Elton Brand was an executive. They lost in the second round. Colangelo was an executive. You know what I'm saying? It was like one of these things. But Daryl Morey was supposed to be the guy who brought instant credibility to the team, and they just haven't done that. And again, you got to give them an opportunity, because you have to give them, say, like, look, all he can say is to the owner is, hey, it wasn't me. It wasn't my fault. I got the right guys, but it was only 15 games. We have to give them an opportunity and a chance to see what they can do. But, the thing is, they're running out of people to blame for every time something goes wrong. So, yeah, it's definitely going to be a hot seat type of thing for them. But, you sit back and you look at some of the deals that they made. You think of, okay, so you got rid of Ben Simmons. As much as they don't want to admit it, there was other people available to them. Like even Tyrese Halliburton was a guy that was available to him. They didn't do it, right? Now, he doesn't want to admit that, but he didn't do it. So, in other words, even now, you look at the playoffs right now, you see where James Harden was balling. James Harden is probably going to be an all-NBA player. Well, you didn't want to pay him. So he opts in. You get rid of him. Tobias Harris he had some great games in that series. He had one game where he didn't look good for Detroit. But again, it's like he looked rejuvenated. There was a lot of players that's out there on different teams that they gave up on, and they felt like they were getting better without, and it proved to be wrong decisions. So, I just feel like for his career, this is a real defining moment for Daryl Morey, because he came here and he's making a lot of money to be here. And the 76ers are worse than the tanking teams, because at this particular time, because those tanking teams, at least they had hope. And right now, we're looking at this team that they don't. Do you know when last week when we came out and we talked about them going to Dubai, how many people were quiet? Like there was no excitement. Like people are like, oh, you mean to tell me that game's going to come on TV? If this was like 5 years ago, everyone would have been excited. People would have been talking about, dang, I want to go over there and see them. That's going to be great. Oh, yeah, like, go ahead. Now everyone's saying, who cares? That's a joke. So, right now the 76ers went from being must-see TV to a team in his own city that people don't even care about.
And people really aren't going to care about the 76ers until they get to the playoffs next year. That's the reality of the situation, too, because when you look at the 76ers team, even if Joel Embiid has a really good regular season, Paul George does, you see the chemistry, there might be hype around the team going into the playoffs, especially after what happened in this past season. But people are waiting to see what happens in the postseason, because they have had really good regular seasons, and then they choke in the playoffs and they don't get past the second round. So he's in a really interesting spot, and I want to continue this conversation. We do have to go to break at this moment, but it doesn't even start when those preseason games start, when it goes into training camp, when it goes into the regular season. All eyes are on Daryl Morey right now, and they will continue to be throughout this offseason. So we will touch on that a little bit more right here on Locked On 76ers. Spring is here, and that means it's home project season. Whether you are refreshing a room or tackling a full renovation, Wayfair is the best kept secret for all things home improvement. From small updates like stylish cabinetware to major upgrades like new vanities, sinks, or outdoor lighting, Wayfair has quality products for every single budget. I just upgraded my kitchen, bathroom, and living space, all things in between with Wayfair, and the selection was absolutely incredible. Their free and fast shipping made it so easy, hauling heavy items from the store. I love that they help top brands and have like GE and Moen at great prices. Shopping was seamless, and I found exactly what I need to fit my space and style. Wayfair makes home improvement easy. Get started at wayfair.com. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every single home. All eyes on Daryl Morey. And I mentioned that because you get yourself into this situation with having a lot of money tied in to Joel Embiid, Paul George, and Tyrese Maxey. So you're already putting yourself in a really tough situation to come in and sign guys. And we dove into that last week about Yabu and Grimes, so we won't go into that right now. But you put yourself in a tough situation to continue to get help that you liked from a season ago. And don't forget, what they do with this draft pick is going to be big, because we've talked about before, there could be a situation where they see themselves trying to be in the salary cap situation and having an opportunity to possibly trade the pick, to possibly keep the pick. So all eyes are going to continue to be on Daryl Morey as this offseason continues to go on for the Philadelphia 76ers. The other thing too, Keith, is that if Daryl Morey is on the hot seat, to me, Nick Nurse is then also on the hot seat. No matter what Nurse does this season, if you're somebody like Josh Harris, if you want to bring in a new GM, that GM usually wants to bring in a new head coach, and maybe that doesn't happen. But at the same time, Daryl Morey put himself and other people's jobs in jeopardy by what he has constructed this team to be.
Yeah, I mean, it tends, like, typically what happens is, you're right, a general manager or a president. Nowadays, the general manager, or it used to be the general manager, is the assistant general manager. And the old general manager is now the president of basketball ops. But let's just say if you have a lead executive, a guy could come in and they could say, you know what, we really like Nick Nurse. And under those circumstances, you can say, let's try to see what he can do for this year. And then after that, we'll reevaluate it, right? Or he can come in and he can say, you know what, I got my guy in place. I wanna bring in someone else, new. The good part is that Nick Nurse, is an NBA championship coach. He was a former coach of the year, to whereas you look at it and say, are there any other coaching options out there that's available who might be better, right? That's the thing. But at the same time, we're looking at an era where you got coaches who are in the middle of a playoff race and lead and have their team in fourth place in the West, and they get fired, right? We're talking about we're talking about the Memphis Grizzlies. We're talking about the Denver Nuggets, right? Where they just let go coaches. So it lets you know that, like, now people just don't care. But yeah, I mean, the fact is, like, whenever you're a front office executive and stuff starts to crumble, it's one of those things where, you're setting everybody else underneath you. They're all like in a bad spot. Now, what he could do is, if they claim that, if he perceives that things are getting tight and Nick Nurse and the Sixers are struggling, they're like 2-12 again, or 2-14, then he might say, hey, Nick, you got to take the bullet, bro. You got to take the bullet. I'm letting you go because I'm trying to keep my job. But it is a bad situation because, like, here's the thing. We keep talking about who they decide to bring back, right? At this particular time, they really don't have a lot of options. We talked last week about how, they can't give Yabu. They don't have Yabu's bird rights. So they have to give him a mid-level. Yabu, if he comes back, Yabu is 29 years old. This is going to be his first major payday. So the Sixers do have a $14.1 million mid-level to give him. But if they give him that, then they're messed up at the first apron. If he takes 5.7, then it could mess him up at the second apron, depending on what you do with other people. Well, then everybody keeps saying, that's a situation they're messed up in. Then everybody keeps saying, well, don't bring Drummond back. Well, you got to decide what you want to do with Kelly Oubre. Oh, Eric Gordon, no, I would never bring him back. They all have player options. So they get to decide if they want to come back or not. So if they want to come back and you don't want them here, then you have to trade them. Are you going to be able to find a trade partner for those guys? So those are situations that they're in that is kind of like, you put yourself in these situations where you don't have a lot of wiggle room, and it all goes back to the money that you have allocated to Joel, the money that you have allocated to Paul George and Maxey and Jared McCain is a rookie, so on a rookie contract, so you can't blame him with that. But that's where when you gave out all this money, that's the thing that messed the Sixers up. And I can't say that they have options because they don't have a lot of options. And that's where Daryl Morey people are going to criticize him for.
It's absolutely a make or break year for Daryl Morey. When we come back on the other side, I want to compare to President Basketball of Operations and see your input, and the fans in the comments, I want you to answer this as well. So we will get to that in a moment right here on Locked On 76ers. And there's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. We know the Sixers aren't in the playoffs right now, but there's still incredible atmosphere out there, especially in the NBA playoffs currently. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena. And with Game Time, you can be a part of it without the stress and last-minute ticket hunting. Game Time makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when demand is high. Prices on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can serve you up and save you up to 60%. Last minute deals. Save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater. I used to do this all the time when I was in college and my friends and I wanted to get to a game. We said, let's check the prices about an hour before and you can save up a lot. Trust me, it is worth it. The all-in pricing means no surprise fees at checkout. What you see is what you pay. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guarantee. Because what time is it? It is game time. So let's compare Daryl Morey to Nico Harrison. Not saying directly compare what Harrison did with the Luka Doncic trade, but when you're talking about make or break, clearly we've already discussed that Daryl Morey isn't a make or break season. Which GM is going to have, or which president of basketball operations is going to have eyes on them a little bit more? Because Harrison has some decent pieces for the Mavericks next season if they can get healthy, but they had one of the craziest trades of all time in NBA history. Daryl Morey has a lot of money wrapped up in three players that you are relying on the health of the team to be successful. Where do you compare those two? Because both of these guys aren't in the best situations, but I'm going to say I do think Nico Harrison is a little bit better off right now.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. And here's the thing. I'm glad you brought up the Nico Harrison thing. Like, to me, I don't really, here's the thing. In order for Nico Harrison to make that move, somebody had to sign off on it, right? They had to, and I feel like he's an easy target right now for whatever the reason. I think that, and I get it. You don't trade a star player like that. But again, someone had to sign off on it, and I also feel like there's a lot of people who are criticizing Nico for what he did, but they don't criticize all executives the same way, right? They just don't. And I feel like maybe they're criticizing him because he doesn't give everyone access and he doesn't give them or let me say this, he doesn't like bow down to certain establishments or what have you. And I just feel like I get it, but I just feel like the way that he's being attacked compared to some of the miscues that other people make, it's not fair and it's not the same. It's just not, right? And yeah, we can all speak of the things that you felt like when he fired someone and he did something on dirty, but we all hear stories of front office people doing stuff like that. Like, oh, well, he called him when he was with a family member or when he was mourning. But we all hear stories like that. We just all do, right? And it's sad, but we just do. And I just feel like people are pinpointing what he's doing and not the other ones. Now, the difference is Nico already made the move.
Right.
The ownership signed off on it. Now, I think they're both in a tough spot because they both have to make it work. And if Nico doesn't make it work this season, then guess what happens? He's probably going to be the fall guy, right? Mm-hmm. But these guys have to be healthy. But when you look at it, you know what? They do have Kyrie. They do have Anthony Davis, right? They do have a couple other guys he traded for. So the team did, even though with all those injuries and everything, in a Western Conference that is tougher than the Eastern Conference, they did make the play-in tournament, right? Kyrie, he's supposed to come back this season and next season in January. Right now, the biggest unknown is is Paul George shot or was he just hurt, right? What? Is Joel Embiid, can he come back from his third knee injury? So when you look at it, yeah, I mean, what Nico did, and people are going to destroy him, but I think there's a little bit more uncertainty on the 76ers side than it is with the Dallas Mavericks side right now. Yes, you don't want to get rid of Luka. You don't do that. But at the same time, what one person did is he got rid of his superstars, where the other person, Daryl Morey, did was he took and gave his superstar a max extension when he was coming off of 58 games played. And correct me if I'm wrong. Word was the Dallas Mavericks claimed that the reason why they did that is because they didn't want another Joel Embiid situation. So, you know what I mean? It's a tough question to answer, but I think that, they're both in a tough spot. Both general managers are in a tough spot.
And they definitely right.
Yeah.
They definitely both are from that standpoint. And I feel the 76ers have a little bit more to lose. And I don't even know if that's the right phrase, but in the sense, I say that because when you look at somebody like Joel Embiid, whose trade value is already down, and it's going to be completely down if he's not healthy next season, you have so much money wrapped up into him. You have so much money wrapped up into Paul George right now that if those two guys don't do what they need to do, you can kiss your success goodbye, and then you might be in a general rebuild mode. And I really like Tyrese Maxey, and I really like Jared McCain, but Tyrese Maxey isn't going to play up right now to the level that Joel Embiid was playing up to. You're talking about an MVP. You're talking about somebody who scored 70 points in a game, who's a multiple NBA All-Star that was an absolute game changer. Tyrese Maxey is a really good player, really great at times as well. But to me right now, at this point of his career, he doesn't have the same impact that Joel Embiid could if Joel Embiid would stay healthy. When you look at the Mavericks, you look at some of their even younger guys like a Derek Lively, you see there that Kyrie Irving is just trying to go out there and go win big with the Dallas Mavericks. They're a team that, yes, what they did from an outsider point of view might seem really, really crazy. But when you compare these two squads, you're talking about a 76ers team that literally just tanked their season away for a lottery pick when they expected to go into the season with a big three. Injuries are huge, but injuries are the topic of every single year at this point and going into this season. So, yeah, I feel that Daryl Morey has it worse. I feel the 76ers have it worse. And call me crazy if you guys think opposite. Let us know in the comments. But at the same time, the trade was crazy. We don't know everything behind the scenes from that standpoint. We know what we got with Philadelphia, and there's a lot of uncertainty going into next year.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I mean, and you know what? I do have to say that with all that stuff that's based on it. At least they did get an Anthony Davis back. Now, again, you can say Anthony Davis is injury prone, this and that. But with Kyrie and all the other guys that they got, you do feel like that maybe they're if now they both have to get healthy, but you do feel like that they're a younger team. They're a little bit more athletic, right? That they're basically in a better spot, better situation. You do have to say that. You have to say that.
Which on paper, I know people might seem like, oh, that's crazy. But when you break it down like this and you really look at it and what the 76ers are going into in this coming season, yeah, definitely in my situation, I'm saying the 76ers have it worse than the Mavericks going into next year. So we're both in the sense that this is a make or break season for Daryl Morey. Let us know in the comments what you think right here on Locked On 76ers. And you can also check us out with our free daily newsletter at lockedondaily.com to stay up to date on all the offseason breaking news, anything that happens, and we will keep you all updated throughout the offseason as well as we get ready for the lottery, the NBA draft, and everything in between. Well, thank you all so much for tuning in to Locked On 76ers. For Keith Pompey, I'm Kayla Santiago saying so long, and we'll see you next time.